Hello, and welcome to Empowering Voices. In this podcast, we share unique and empowering stories of authors, entrepreneurs, and change makers. I'm your host, Mathana Senthilnathan. I'm an author, a client, and an official associate with Book Writing Venture. I invite our audience to take a few seconds now and subscribe, like, comment, and share. And we really appreciate you for doing that. All right, now let's get to the fun part. Today, I'm excited to introduce a very special guest, a man who is distinguished economist and former certified economic developer, acclaimed international public speaker and thought leader, #1 best-selling author and award-winning novelist, author of The Ghost of Rio Grande, a historical action-adventure novel weaving real events with thrilling fiction. He is based in Las Vegas, Nevada at the moment. Don Allen Holbrook, welcome to Empowering Voices podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's so wonderful to be here.
Excellent. So we just have a few questions that we'd like to ask you. So I'll start first with, what is the inspiration behind The Ghost of Rio Grande?
Oh, excellent. Well, I call it my COVID Western, and that's because during COVID, we were all hunkered down in our houses and offices. My office is actually in my house, so I have a study I've got here that I have everything set up in, and I was a little bored, and I decided that I would look for opportunities. Most of my books that I currently write, let's say in the last 6 or 7 years, are based on either real events from history that I really found fascinating, and then I wanted to do a little bit more, delve into more research, and then provide a fictional twist to it as to what maybe caused, maybe the things that people don't necessarily easily know about that might have happened. And so then I do a little speculation on all the things that surround that story and try to fill in the gaps that maybe history hasn't filled in. And in that case, Ghost is one of those kind of stories. I decided to solicit that I was open to ideas, and Dr. Beto Garcia, who is actually the great grandson of the actual real ghost of the Rio Grande, had this family story that had been passed down for 2 generations from his great grandmother to his grandmother to his dad, mom, and into him. So he told me this story about his great grandfather being this infamous Tejano hero that kind of was never talked about. And there's not too many Tejano heroes in the whole world of literacy or movies. And it kind of fascinated me because he was a real person. It really did do a lot of the things and exist at the same time of a lot of things that we're going to fictionalize in the story. And he actually did have some of the events are based on his actual life, and some of those things I call it my Forrest Gump Tejano story. So he kind of became the Tejano Forrest Gump. He met a lot of really famous people at the time, like Winston Churchill and Mata Hari and the Prince of France and some other people. But in real life, he didn't really meet those people, but since they had their own stories going on, I wove him into the story to wrap in that part of history. But a lot of the events that happened to him in Texas actually really happened to him in Texas, like his struggle with the Texas Rangers and the struggle between the border between Texas and Mexico and the Germans. And so that all is true, but I put him into it to help pull in the reader to know this is all the stuff that was going on in the year 1914 that we really don't know a lot about because history didn't record much back then. And so I like to do stories that are based on real things that happened and then try and tell you what I think might have happened that we didn't know about. And that was the inspiration. As he told me the story, I really liked Dr. Garcia's story. And then we started from there working on it chapter by chapter and filling in the blanks and, getting a story put together that we feel is a really compelling, fun adventure that also involves his grandfather, who really did exist then and really did have some part in the story, as kind of the protagonist. And then it tells the story also of his grandmother, who was a real person. And a lot of the characters are based on The vast majority of the characters in the story are real people that existed in 1914, including his own family, the cousins, the brothers, all real people, all real uncles and great uncles of my client, Dr. Garcia. And so we did it as a joint venture. I did the writing. He kind of gave me the basis and the premise for the story, and we went from there. And it's turned into this wonderful book that's been really well accepted in society and the world. And now they're making a movie out of it. So it should be a really fun thing to be a part of. So it's my first book to film venture, and it's I'm learning a lot about the film industry, and it's been a really great journey so far.
Thank you so much, Don. What a fantastic way to combine reality with fiction. So it's such a great idea. And I'm excited to hear that it's going to be a movie. My goodness, that's really great.
It's
um,
thank you. It's a lot of fun, and like I said, as an author, it's a real learning curve for me because I've never had to deal with Hollywood direct, and I'm learning a lot of things you read and hear about Hollywood are actually true, and some of them are even more true than you hear about in the news. So they can be way more flamboyant than maybe we know, and sometimes not so flamboyant on some things. So it's interesting how much of what we hear in the media is just made up poppycock, as I would call it, and then some of it's even worse than what you hear in the media. Thank God I choose not to deal with that kind of stuff. But you have to be really picky in Hollywood who you're going to deal with, because there's good guys and bad guys in Hollywood, as we've all found out from the news, right? So you really have to vet who you just sign up to do a deal with. And I've been through that too. I've been through a couple different producers, and I really like who's producing the movie now. And they're very credible and very, a very good studio home for the movie. And I'm really happy with where we eventually ended up. So I use the word eventual. It took us a little bit of a journey to get to the right people.
Oh, of course. That's always the case, isn't it, with any new project?
We had a
Yeah.
lot, but I'll tell you something. Dr. Garcia, the great grandson, is such a great guy. We've become such great friends, and we've done this journey together. He's been a phenomenal partner, and we literally, I think the backstory on how we got to where we are, not so much the book side of it, because I've published a lot of books. This is my, see, Ghost would have been my 25th book that I've published. So I know the book business pretty well, and I have my own publishing company, and I deal with the publishers and I deal with distributors, and I know the book industry. I know how to do that, and I know that side of the business, but we didn't know the Hollywood side. So he and I, he's a medical doctor, so he doesn't know it either. We just went over to Hollywood and rented a car and drove around and went to the studios and met with all these studios, like two cowboys from Texas, and everybody said, you can't do that. I mean, you can't just run around and meet with all these studio people and think you're going to get a deal. And even our attorney, who's a really good entertainment attorney in LA, who does this full time for a living for the last 30 years, he said, you guys just got to operate a certain way and do things by the book. And of course, Dr. Garcia, I call him Beto. Beto and I didn't do any of that. We just drove around in our little car and met everybody. And he said, and then we called him on the phone and said, we kind of got a deal. He goes, what do you mean you kind of got a deal? I said, we kind of got a deal. And he goes, how in the world did you guys do that? I said, we just kept going to studios and talking to people. And since there were really because there was an actor strike, if you remember, so there was no Hollywood stuff going on, allegedly, but they were all thirsty. They knew they were going to come out of the strike sooner or later. So they all wanted good stories to be able to work on. And so we was at the right place, right time, right place, met the right people. And we just decided we liked the one that we chose. And that's how, but you weren't supposed to be able to do it this way. You were supposed to go through agents and managers and attorneys. And we circumvented all that by driving around in our little Mustang and just meeting everybody for breakfast and coffee and just being the name of our LLC is Two Vaqueros, Two Cowboys. So we named it that on purpose because we just went out and cowboyed the steel.
Yeah, sounds like it. Thank you, Don, for giving us a little bit of a background on how you got to Hollywood and how it's becoming a movie.
Yeah.
Now, if I can just ask you if you can give us a brief overview of your life now in terms of family, businesses, and of course, as a best-selling author.
Well, I'm a full-time author. I this is all I do is write books. I've always got a book or two on the computer that I'm working on. I have a couple right now, and I'm doing my very first kids book, which is hopefully going to come out this Christmas. My It's called The Lost Claus. It's about Santa Claus taken off, and Christmas is at risk, of course. And our hero is a 14-year-old boy and his dog, and they set out with their newfound friend, Captain Nimbus, which is a gnome, and they set out to uh, find Santa Claus and why he ran off from the North Pole right before Christmas. And of course, it's got a real human side to it, which is what we all go through with relationships. Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus got into a fight, and he decided to try like a little Jimmy Stewart. It's a Wonderful Life, and what would life be like if I didn't exist? And of course, we find out that Christmas is kind of a big thing, you know. So he and Mrs. Claus have to find their way to figure out their relationship, which is something that all humans can relate to. But it's still a great little Christmas story for kids. And I wrote it. I'll tell you the backstory as to why I wrote the Christmas book. I have been so busy with all this Hollywood stuff and all these things for the Ghost that I didn't have a chance to really turn out my normal novel. I usually turn a novel out every year. I have one ready to go, but when you turn a novel out, you really have to focus all your marketing on it, and you have to focus all your media on it. And if I did that before Ghost got solidified with Hollywood, I thought it would kind of preempt Ghost's ability. So I've kind of sat on this next story called The Ninth Templar, which is about the Knights Templar and how they came about, which is also based on real facts and which I did a lot of research on. But I decided I wanted to turn out this little Christmas book because it's only 60 pages and it's really easy, and I just have to get it illustrated, and it tells a great little story. But I will give you the backstory on why I did that if you want me to go into that. Why?
Yeah, so right now we're focusing more on the Ghost of Rio Grande for
Right.
this particular episode.
That's the current book right now.
So the next segment I'd like to get into is the writing journey itself.
Okay.
So writing a book is a big undertaking. Can you walk us through your process, and did you face any challenges when you wrote this book?
With the Ghost, I didn't face any writing challenges because I had the source for most of my characters from Dr. Garcia. He was able to give me characters. He was able to give me names of people, which are always fun. So there really wasn't any challenges as to the writing of the story, just to decide what to include in it. So I decided to include all the things going on around 1914 through 1919, which is the real lifespan of the Ghost in history. And it was largely unrecorded, but he actually did a lot of the things in the story. So Dr. Garcia was able to give me the backgrounds on things that he knew his grandfather was involved in. And then I, of course, added in stuff like Matahari being a spy and the French Prince, and also Winston Churchill and Pinkerton detectives, and President Wilson, and the real governor of Texas, and all those kind of things. So I added all that in, but they're from real people. And the challenge was really just historical research and just plugging it all, weaving it all together to where it was a narrative where it made sense for Fabriciano, who was the Ghost, being at the time where he could meet those people and it makes sense to the story. So the story arc had to stay true to what was plausible and possible. And I tried to do that as best I could. And obviously, a lot of readers responded and said they loved it. So it worked out. It worked. My guess worked out good.
That's excellent. It's great that you had the doctor to help you with this, kind of make the book easier for you to write, because he had the facts. So,
Well, and the other thing he had, which was really useful to me, because while I know very little about Mexico and the southern border of Texas, he really lives there on the Rio Grande. He lives on the Rio Grande River. He's from McAllen, Texas, down there. He's really from Rio Grande City. He's really from where takes place. So when I need to know cities across the river in Mexico, he could tell me, Camargo. He could tell me how far Monterrey is. Is it easy to ride there in a day? Are there train routes that go between all the different Mexican cities, which we as Americans spend very little time really studying? So he was able to help me with the terrain, the locations, and things that I would have had to do a lot more research to do that without him.
For sure. So it came in handy that you got to know him.
Oh yeah, we're great friends today. We're partners.
Oh, awesome.
So.
So, just another question here to follow up with Book Writing Venture. How did they support you in overcoming some of the challenges with writing this book?
Well, I really just ran into them recently, basically on the publicity side, is that they found I joined a group that they belong to, and they kind of said, "Hey, we'd like to work with you on promoting it." And we're still going through the whole. We haven't really started promoting the book, to be honest with you. It's taken off on a natural, organic trail of its own because of the basis of what it's about and the Tejano hero background. There's not too many Tejano heroes. Um, and so it's kind of done its own thing, but we're going to actually focus in 2025 on doing some real marketing and putting out, the story of the book because it's won a bunch of
Okay,
awards.
that's what I was going to ask you next was how are you marketing your book? But you've answered that question. Now you're looking into doing that in the next year with the help of Book Writing Venture. Yeah.
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
and that's how we met, and also I feel more comfortable actually going out and doing the marketing now that the book has overcome any criticism. I mean, it's won 4 or 5 major awards. It just won the audio book just won the #1 award in the country from Hollywood from the Society of Voice Actors and Film Actors in Hollywood. It won the top historical drama for audiobooks in the country and up against some big competition. So it came out #1. So I'm pretty comfortable that it's a really good book. It's got about between all the different review services, over 500 book reviews from critical readers. And it got a 4.9 average. I mean, so it's got a really good average out of 5. And so I feel like it's pretty well vetted and it's pretty bulletproof on being a good story. So now I'm willing to say, okay, let's turn this spigot on and tell the rest of the world why this is a great story. And people can go look and read the reviews and say, wow, people really do like the story. It resonates with people.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure there are elements in the book that people can relate to, especially these days, when you mentioned about the relationship and, all of that. So, um, uh, the next question I have for you is, what would you say to aspiring authors who are considering partnering with Book Writing Venture?
Well, I mean, I think any author doing any kind of, I mean, I have a lot of friends that are authors, and a lot of them are first-time authors, and some of them are really well famous authors that you guys would all know. But I'm not going to name drop. But I know a lot of really established authors, and I know some people that are new. I tell them the same things I learned from the people that I met, which is being an author is a business. You're investing in yourself and you're choosing your partners very carefully, and you have to vet those partners. You want to make sure, and we're all going to make mistakes. As you know, we're going to choose partners that don't work out. I do keep a tally and a tab on who's effective and who works and who does what they say they're going to do. And then I tell other people. We all share with, like I'm in the same group as Authors Book Writing Ventures, and if somebody did something wrong, the first thing we would do is go in there and say, "Hey, I wouldn't buy from these people because they don't do what they say they're going to do, or they don't follow through." And that kind of keeps everybody on the up and up in the groups that we're in. And I feel like when I ran into Book Writing Ventures, they were very credible and they had good reviews and people spoke well of them. So I thought, well, this is somebody that I want to partner with. And each time you do that, you make those same choices. You choose people based on their track record, what you can read from third party, third party endorsements, just like on book reviews, is really important. And I like places where you can go check out people's references and see what people have had in the past and experience. So I felt like this was a good thing. And then they had the podcast that I agreed to do. And I said, because they're credible, I wouldn't do it if you guys weren't credible.
Yeah, for sure. That makes a lot of sense with any type of business, right? You want to partner with someone that's credible, trustable, and you can work along with, and they can also help achieve your goals, right? So,
I mean, and that's where I think I see this going with them in 2025 is we'll start working on now, how do we get out and sell the book? How do I get out and sell the book and make the general public know about why it's a great book and let them, read it and make book sales? Because you do have to make revenue back on books. Besides just Hollywood, you need to make book revenue via established author.
yeah. Well, I think making the movie will also help sell the book because a
Well,
lot of people love reading the book after watching a movie.
right. And we knew it was going to cross pollinate, but you don't know that you're going to get a movie deal when you start a book.
No.
There's
Yeah,
no
that's
way there's
amazing.
there's no way you're going to just say I'm going to write a book and it's going to be a movie. I
Yeah.
mean, and anybody that says that to you, they either A, are a really well established author with a huge name that thinks they. I mean, look at some of the authors, even Lee Child, how
Yeah.
long how long it took him to sell the Jack Reacher story. Now today, yes, people love watching it on TV, but he was a accomplished author for 30 years before that.
Yeah.
Took
Yeah.
that long. So I feel very fortunate that I was able to get there a lot quicker than some of my friends and colleagues out there.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, you hit the jackpot by going on
Yeah,
your book.
but I also tell people really up front, it's like a lightning strike. You don't know that you're going to get this success. You don't know
No,
that
yeah.
it's going to happen. You just do it because you have a passion for the act. If this had never been made into a movie, I'd still love the story, and I
Mhm.
would still be glad that I wrote it.
Yeah. Thank you for that. The next question I want to ask you is, how has becoming a published author changed you personally and professionally? Has it changed you, or have you, remained the same?
Uh, I'm pretty much who I've been my whole life, but I would tell you that it's changed my exposure to people and to certain types of people. I mean, as an author, we live in our own little world anyways. I mean, we go off in our own little world, we create our own little worlds. If we want to retreat and have a great life, we retreat to our world that we create in our own ourself. I mean, I make the world that I live in. And if I really want to do that, it gives me that escape and that passion to follow, and where I can be whoever I decide the character is. On the other side of the fence, I've met so many really fascinating people that I probably would have never met if I wasn't an author.
Yeah.
Um, Famous authors, famous movie stars, famous directors, famous producers, famous politicians. I mean, you never know who your fan club's going to be. And
Mhm.
you'd be surprised how many people I've run into that are fans of my work that I had no idea until they finally either ran into me or emailed me and said, I have your book on my coffee table. I've been reading it and I really love it. And you're like, oh, I didn't know you even were a reader. And I didn't know you were one of my fans. And then, of course, you establish relationships with all these people that you maybe read about or hear about in the news. And some of them are not anything like what you hear. At least my exposure to them is not what you read about. And some of them are worse, some of them are better. I mean, so um, I don't go around and name drop, and people who deal with me know that I'm very secretive and private. And I think authors need to decide what their persona is to the public and how much they're going to show the public, because you will get some um, nefarious people out there that maybe don't have your best interest at heart. Both readers and also people that want to exploit you for money or for exposure or for news or whatever. And you have to decide who your persona is and what you're going to show the public and what you're not. So I very rarely talk about my family because I had a stalker in 2012, and I learned a lesson that you don't put a lot out that they can stalk, and I don't want them stalking my family. And
Yeah.
you can buy my books and say whatever you want to say online about me, and good or bad, but don't include my family in it. They're not a part of this world, and they don't have any idea how I write books. Or I mean, they know I write and they know where I go to write, but they don't have any idea who I deal with or the business side of it. And I don't want them involved in it because they don't need that pressure. And they
Mhm.
and they don't. I have to worry about, as you can imagine, you're in the public eye. I have to worry about everything I say, where I go, who sees me, what I'm involved in, because I'm a public person, whether I like it or not. And you have to give that up. You have
Yeah.
to give up you have to give up a segment of your privacy when you become a published author, because people are going to look you up and see who you are.
Yeah, that's for sure. With fame comes a lot of trouble too.
Yeah, I mean, and you
So,
have to be willing to accept that. I mean,
yeah.
so then that's why you have to meter and monitor how much you give out, and we are entitled to our privacy somewhat, but if
Mhm.
you give that away, you gave it away. It's your own. You did that on your own accord. If somebody
Yeah.
tries to steal it, that's a whole separate issue. That's a
Yeah. Mhm. So what's next for you, Don? Are there any more books or projects in the pipeline?
5.
Five. Oh my, you're a busy guy.
I have 5 right now on my computer,
Oh
uh,
wow.
of which they're all pretty much done, written. They need to be edited. Some of them need to be edited. Some of them are ready for publishing. I have 3 that are ready for publishing. But as I told you earlier, I only bring one book out at a time. So
Mhm.
my next book is about the Knights Templar.
All right.
It's
Okay.
based on a real it's based on the real founding of the Knights Templar back in 1118 on Christmas Day, and
Mhm.
why they were founded. And then I speculate on what they supposedly found that made them so dangerous to the church and the monarchs, and how they rose in power, and then what happened to them when they were suddenly betrayed in 1307 by the Vatican and by the monarchs simultaneously, which gave us the whole Friday the 13th, Black Friday kind of curse, was the Templars. So I tell the whole story of their 200 years of existence and how they still exist today.
Wow, incredible.
Mhm.
Fascinating. Can't wait for that to come out.
It's called the Ninth Templar because there were 9 founding Templars, and
Okay.
the founder Hugh de Payens, who was the
Mhm.
founder, was a French knight in the First Crusade. He left the 9th person anonymous, and nobody knew who the Ninth Templar was. To this day, nobody really knows who the Ninth Templar really was. So
Wow.
he's truly an anonymous person. Of
Mhm.
course, in the story, I kind of lead you through who I think it was, and
Oh,
it's really real investigation. It's really who I think it was. And
yeah.
so I present who I think the Ninth Templar is. And then, of course, it's based on something that happened 900 years ago, but yet it's set today in modern times. So that person and his family lineage still exists today, as the Templars still do, by the way, in secrecy.
Wow.
And I give you the whole way that they perpetuated their secrecy and why they keep it a secret and what they're hiding and what the real discovery was that was so phenomenal, which nobody really knows. To this day, they've never been able to solve 5 mysteries of the Knights Templar, and I kind of solve them for you in the story. Doesn't mean that it's true. It's my best guess based on real research of 16 years as to what I think really they did discover and what made it so phenomenal. And it must have been pretty close to what a lot of people believe because they actually knighted me, or I got knighted as a historian with the order.
Oh, wow.
They,
Wow.
so I always say, well, a lot of people that are actually in the order must believe I'm pretty close to the truth because they wanted me to be one of them. So they they sought me out and said, we'd like you to be in our order. And today I got knighted in 2010 at West Point, New York, at the U.S. Military Academy, and I became a knight of the order. And so in Europe, I'm Sir Don Holbrook.
Wow. Amazing. What a story. And I'm
It's
sure that new book is going to be made a movie because that sounds very exciting and thrilling.
That was the one that I thought would be the movie first, and then
Uh,
Ghost kind of jumped ahead of it because it became so popular. And but
yeah.
yes, we do have a 2 movie deal. I have one on Night Templar as well. That it'll come out next year.
Nice, nice. I'm looking forward to seeing all these. And now that I know who wrote it and who's behind the story, it's amazing. Because I've watched movies, but never really know who it was, who wrote the book or who created the story. But it's fascinating. Yeah,
Thank
definitely.
you. Yeah, there's a we've had a lot of sorry about that. We've had a lot of fun with it, and I've really enjoyed it.
Mhm. Well, Don, it's been an absolute pleasure having you as our guest. Your story is amazing and inspiring and downright life-changing. For those interested in reading The Ghost of the Rio Grande, a novel, it's available now in Kindle, hardback, and paperback, and Audible. Thank you for joining us on our podcast, Empowering Voices. Please remember to subscribe and click the notification option. To stay informed of our upcoming episodes, there is so much here to share with you. In each episode, we will continue to explore the book writing process as we spotlight each author's stories of inspiration and success. Please leave comments below for Don Holbrook or Book Writing Venture. Also, if you have any questions, you can email me directly, link below at Book Writing Venture. We are excited to see how our talented and professional staff can help you find your empowered voice so you can then share it with the world. Thank you again so much. And thank you, listeners, for spending this time with us. I'm your host, Mathana Senthilnathan. And until next time, remember, we are your partners in success. So keep dreaming big, and hopefully, maybe your book will become a movie one day as well. Thank you again, Don. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers and happy holidays to you and your listeners and
Happy holidays and Merry Christmas.